It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with Chief Conversationalist Thomas Senna. Featuring Matt Ardill. And special guest, Mike Murray. And now, curator of the hall, JD.
Thank you so much, Doug DeNance. It is a thrill to be back here at the SNL Hall of Fame on the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. My name is JD, and it is a absolute wreck outside. Let me fold up this umbrella. My feet are dirty. Follow my lead. I'm going to wipe them. You know what I'm saying? Let's go inside. But before we do, the SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair where each episode we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity in the hall. And that's how we play the game. It's just that simple. We have a barnburner of a show this week. Thomas is going to be joined by stat guru from the SNN, Mike Murray, to discuss the career of four-time host Charles Barkley. This should be a good one, folks. But before we get into that conversation, why don't we visit our friend Matt Ardill in his trivia corner? Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I give you the Trivia Meister, Matt Ardill. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, JD. And yourself?
You know what? Any day that I get to sit here and listen to you tell me some of my favorite actor, actresses, or pop culture figures' height, then I am in a good place.
Hey, it's the facts that everybody wants to know.
That's right.
So, yeah. Well, I've got a very tall tale for you today. Charles Barkley, 6'6", February 20th, 1963 is his birth date. He was born in Leeds, Alabama, and nicknamed Sir Charles, the bread truck, and round mound of rebound. He was the first African-American born in a segregated hospital in his all-white town, and one of the first group of black kids to attend his elementary school. In high school, he actually didn't make the varsity basketball team at first.
Get out of here.
No, yeah, it's true. He was named as a reserve, but he grew from 5'10" to 6'4" over the summer. Oh. And then he was put in a starting position the next year, and he averaged 19 points and 17 rebounds per game in high school. He then went on to play for the Auburn Tigers in college, where he would become known for his talent of blocking shots and then dunking, often getting possession of the ball and running the full length of the court to dunk instead of pass. Drafted to the NBA during his final year of college, he dropped out of school to join the 76ers and was best friends with Michael Jordan. They were born 3 days apart. And he's also friends with Magic Johnson, who, when Magic had to retire due to his HIV diagnosis, Charles changed his number from his college number of 34 to Johnson's 32 to pay tribute to him during his last year in the NBA. He is actually the shortest player in NBA history to lead the league rebounding from 86 to 87, as well as being a basketball player and TNT sports commentator. He is an actor with 30 film credits, produced 3, and was one of the writers for Inside the NBA. He has been on shows including The Goldberg, Modern Family, and The Simpsons, and even the Clerks TV show, appearing in an animated form as himself.
Huh. Very cool. I never watched the Clerks cartoon.
It's very Clerks-y.
Yeah.
It's definitely got that Kevin Smith vibe.
Well, this is very Barkley of you. So nicely done. Let's go downstairs with Thomas and Mike Murray as they discuss more about our nominee this week, Charles Barkley.
All right, Matt and JD, thank you so much and welcome to another discussion about a great nominee here at the SNL Hall of Fame. A fun one, an interesting one, I would say an unorthodox nominee for the SNL Hall of Fame. Of course, we were talking about the one and only Sir Charles Barkley today for the host category. And with me, a repeat guest, I had to bring him back, Mike Murray, from the Saturday Night Network, a stats guru for Saturday Night Live. Not just a stats guru. Like, I don't want to pigeonhole Mike as just a stats guy, because Mike, your knowledge of SNL goes beyond stats. Like, I think you need to get more credit. Like, you have insights that a lot of people don't have. So it's not just like in the lab and the numbers, that's a lot of it, but you have like genuine awesome knowledge and insights about the show. So I'm so happy to have you back here on the SNL Hall of Fame.
Thanks, Thomas. I mean, great intro right there. What do I say? I'm happy to be on this show with you. I think you're one of the best SNL podcast hosts out there. So for me to be with you talking shop about basketball, about SNL, what could be better than this? So thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope Brad and Gary from the Not Ready for Primetime podcast heard you just say that. So we need to cut them down to pegs.
No, they're great too. My first appearance on SNL Hall of Fame was with Brad.
Yeah, they're fun guys. I actually got to meet them in person this past weekend in Philadelphia.
Oh, awesome.
But I appreciate that, man. It's so good to have you back. Before we get started, we like to do the plugs up top. Why don't you tell people what you're up to this season on the Saturday Night Network?
Well, big one coming up, season 5-0. So late September, we're going to have a new season of the show. So that means the SNN, the Saturday Night Network, will be back in full force. So, we do 3 shows a week. We do a hot take show at 1 a.m. following the broadcast. We do a Monday roundtable. And on Wednesday nights, that's my show. It's the stat show. It's called By the Numbers. And if you've ever been interested in the analytics side of SNL, which is a hard pitch at times, but people gravitate towards it. And it was just something that I started doing, just kind of making my own sports world about my favorite show, because my number one love in life is sports, and I'm always on the reference sites and like to do comparisons. And I figured, why not do that for the institution that is SNL? So I started doing appearances, and then I started doing screen time. I made an algorithm to get an output number for each person who appears on the show called the Power Ranking. Awesome. And so we cover those 3 numbers every week on the show, and just kind of get into like a sports radio talk show about SNL every week. So following a new episode every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, you can hear that show on the SNN.
That's awesome. And the thing with analytics on your show is it leads to discussions. So it leads to insights about that week's episode or the season as a whole. So you get really just neat discussions like sports radio, and I'm the same way. Like, I always watched SNL like it was sports. I'm really into like the stats part of it. I was perusing Pro Football Reference, Basketball Reference, and Baseball Reference just today for one reason or another. So I'm always on those sites too.
Yeah, that's a normal day for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I subscribe monthly to Basketball Reference so I don't get the ads. So
I do to football. Yeah,
that's awesome. So those are great sites.
I've been working on a entire history of NFL game log for the past year.
I have Excel spreadsheets that people that would blow their mind about how much of a sports nerd that I am. So we're on the same wavelength, Mike.
Yeah, that's why we get along so well. And
for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I do, even as a kid, thought SNL was like a sport because it's live. So, I've said before that, yeah, it is cool to know how much screen time like Chewbacca got in Star Wars, but like it's edited. Like this is live.
Exactly.
Things are being cut at dress. Things are being cut for time live during the show. So if you don't make it on that night, like that's a 0. But like if what if all 3 of your showcases make it? Like, wouldn't you want to look back? I mean, this is the SNL Hall of Fame and say those are your Hall of Fame episodes, just like games or seasons.
Yeah, precisely. And we didn't do this on purpose, by the way, but this is the most seamless segue I think that I've had in a long time, comparing SNL to sports, because today's nominee, Charles Barkley, of course, former NBA player, current, well, I guess that's maybe a little up in the air, but he was on inside the NBA for 24 years. But I guess now we'll see what happens heading into next season. But Charles Barkley, known as one of the great characters in NBA history, even while he was still playing, he was known as kind of an off-the-wall character. He's pretty short for his position. They called him the round mound of rebound, played an aggressive style, outspoken guy. So people knew all about Charles Barkley. So I'm wondering, Mike, like, when did you take notice of Charles Barkley, and what's your basketball fandom like?
Well, for me, I'm a big basketball fan, huge Celtics fan, so just got Banner 18, so have to shout that out. I think this team is going to be good for a while, but I am a Boston sports fan, so I know that things come, and thank you very much. And I know that these things come, and they don't always work out. I have had a lot of heartbreak and a lot of triumph, so very happy with the team right now. But as far as Mr. Chuck there, I would say late 96 Space Jam. That was when I knew those players on the team. I had all the Space Jam figurines as a kid, including Charles Barkley. And so I was a little young to watch him play like for the Sixers, but knew who he was. And then seeing his like post playing career persona, I wanted to start this episode with you right now by saying, like, is Charles Barkley like the funniest athlete? Because I was thinking about this right before the show. So I'll give you a minute to think about it. But a lot of athletes have a lot of charisma, like they're big, they're like larger than life people, and they have a lot of bravado. And so like they have funny personalities, or they say things post game that are quotable. But I think Charles Barkley is like naturally a funny dude.
Yeah, he is.
Do you have any nominees who would be at his level or funnier than him?
I think Ricky Henderson was one of the funnier athletes, maybe a little before some of our listeners' times, but Ricky played from like 1979 to like 2003 or something. So he spanned, but he was funny
with the Red Sox.
Cup of coffee with like almost every team. Yeah. It seemed like, but Ricky was very funny. He would speak. He would call himself Ricky, so he would say Ricky did this or Ricky did that or what. Like so, but I don't know. I think Chuck's is more intentional. John Sally, if you remember John Sally, he was an actual stand-up comedian. One other recent person I'll throw into the mix, honestly, is Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin's one of the funnier athletes. Chuck and Blake Griffin are probably the 2 funniest athletes that I've seen, in my opinion.
And Blake Griffin, appearance on SNL 2 seasons ago in the Kim K show.
Yeah, exactly. I'm halfway surprised he never hosted, but I don't know. But he took like classes at the Groundlings and stuff. So like, Blake was real serious about it. Yeah, but Chuck's just naturally funny. Like it seems like he doesn't even have to try. Like, you think like that's part of what draws people to him as an SNL host, is just sort of like some sort of natural humor. Like, what is it that's made him such like a beloved figure in our community?
Well, I think it's kind of what I said, is that there might be a divide sometimes between the sports world and the theater / comedy world. And so when you see somebody who's willing to play for the other team, which is maybe the team that we're on this podcast, of being comedy commentators / analysts, and to see somebody come over to that side, and the fact that he's come back. I mean, we're going to talk about his shows, but he's hosted 4 times. which is I would consider a record for an athlete, unless you count The Rock as an athlete, which I feel like he already is more of an actor coming from
I think
WWF, now
first
WWE.
appearance, I count as an athlete appearance.
Yeah.
But he was promoting his wrestling. He was like almost there as The Rock in gimmick. So I can maybe count that.
Yeah, so I mean, The Rock is a 5-timer, so, but Chuck is right behind at 4. And so to answer your question, I feel like people are so, you can say this about sports, politics, comedy, anything like that. People are always embracing somebody who's embracing them. So I think that Charles Barkley, the willingness to come back, I mean, he was coming off an NBA MVP season.
Yeah.
So he was the reigning MVP. I mean, Michael Jordan hosted in, I think, 91, and then he went on to be MVP. But Charles Barkley, reigning MVP, we saw like Tom Brady and Eli Manning, like they came off a Super Bowl win. Travis Kelce more recently. But so Barkley was the reigning MVP, came in, we're going to talk about the show, that show, so we'll get into it in a second. But coming back 3 more times and just, he's not a trained comedian, but having a blast. And I feel like the cast always liked working with him. I mean, we'll talk about some of the sketches that he appeared in or they wrote for him. And he was just so game. So I think people in the SNL community and comedy just are down for somebody to hop over the fence.
That's such a good point. Like somebody from another world really embracing our world of SNL. That's actually a really good point. That's a really quick way to endear yourself to our community as a quote unquote outsider. I think that's such a good point. I always get stuck too on like just the concept of athletes in general as hosts and how people feel about that. So you as like a huge SNL fan, like what do you think about athletes in general as hosts of the show?
Honestly, I love it. Not because I'm a sports fan. That does help because usually I know the person before they host, whereas maybe people were watching one night and JJ Watt was on the screen and they're saying, who the hell is this guy? But so that helps that I know the people. But I think one of the best things about SNL, and you can quote me on this, is having not just comedians host the show. I think that if it would be a great show if every week it was a hot stand-up or someone promoting a comedy movie that's coming out, but having other areas of entertainment come in is the beauty of the show. So we don't get it every season. We don't, of course, get it multiple times a year, but when we see somebody like that come in, it just brings us a certain energy. It might not make for the funniest show or the most memorable sketch. That's okay with me, though. It's a fun ride, and it's something new and different, and that's all I want from SNL, no matter what.
Yeah, I think I tend to get surprised in some ways. I'm always skeptical going in. They announced an athlete, and I think in my mind, I'm going to watch the episode and suffer from, like, I'll be embarrassed for them, and I hate feeling that way. I hate seeing somebody on screen, and I'm like feeling embarrassed for them. So in my mind, I'm automatically like gloom and doom, like, oh no, how is this going to go? Travis Kelce's hosting. How is this going to go? But I always tend to be pleasantly surprised. I think, like, maybe there's a low bar, but it's always like there's a different energy, I think, when athletes host.
Totally. And I love low bar SNL. I won't lie. A lot of times I go in to a titan of the show and I get let down a little bit. So when someone comes in that I've literally, like an actor or actress I've never heard of, and they impress me, like, that's great. And same with athletes.
Yeah, so we've had athletes from all major sports that I can remember. Even hockey, we've had one hockey player that I remember. Only one, right? Yeah, only one hockey player host.
Great one, yeah.
Yeah, the great one hosted, Wayne Gretzky. So we've been, like, I think it's pretty cool. Like the times that we do see a pro athlete host, we're in for a wild ride.
And we just had an Olympics on NBC, so
yeah,
Simone Biles.
Maybe Simone, exactly.
Come on down.
Yeah, exactly.
Victory lap.
Following Michael Phelps' footsteps as an Olympian.
Yeah, Nancy
Kerrigan. Yeah. So I do remember maybe both of those episodes were a little rough, but it's
Michael
fine.
Phelps.
Simone,
I think it's pretty good.
Was it good? Okay, I haven't
Kerrigan,
watched it
not
in a
so
long
much,
time.
but
Yeah.
Michael Phelps' Space Olympics alone can get that up to a C.
Okay. I think I need to go back and rewatch. Maybe I'll rewatch Phelps' episode if Simone Biles ends up hosting.
Yeah, good call.
I'll be proved wrong. So as far as Charles Barkley, a little bit of sports nerd background before he hosted his first episode. He hosted in September of 93. It was the season premiere. So if you're a basketball player, you're going to host probably in the first 2 or 3 episodes because the way the season works, if you're not hosting one of those first 3 episodes, you're just not hosting that season. So every basketball player that we've seen, they'll get like the season premiere early on, unless they're retired or something like that. So he hosted in September of 93. By that point, as you mentioned, like Charles was probably considered the second best player in the league behind Michael Jordan, won that MVP in 93, led the Suns to the NBA Finals. The summer prior, the leading scorer on the Dream Team, it wasn't Michael Jordan, it's Charles Barkley. That was the leading scorer and arguably the dominant personality on that Dream Team. So like couple all of that with his personality, I think it did make sense for him to host SNL in 93. So again, season 19, episode 1, notable because of musical guest Nirvana appeared then. That was their second time on the show. Right away, Mike, like really memorable monologue and a really memorable, in my opinion, SNL moment from a lot of people's childhoods in that monologue with a certain like children's character.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I watched the show last night, the 93, his first show, and how young he sounds because Kenan Thompson has now done an impression of Charles Barkley 22 times on SNL. And so you're used to that cadence of the impression from Kenan, and of course, if you watch Inside the NBA and you know Charles Barkley well, you can do an impression yourself, kind of like a Christopher Walken type of person. Everybody can do a Charles Barkley and say, that's terrible, whatever. He sounds so young, and he doesn't really get too much live screen time because right. the monologue is dedicated to a pre-taped segment of him playing one-on-one with Barney the Purple Dinosaur.
Yeah, and he's like elbowing Barney in the face and dunking on him and doing all that stuff. And I think it was a play. So I think around this time, Barkley had some ads where he said, "I am not a role model." So that was a thing. He's like, "I'm not a role model. Parents are role models." So he had this whole thing of like, you need to be role models to your kids because I'm not. So maybe it was kind of a play off of that. Like another, I guess Barney's considered like maybe with kids role model. I'm going to push Barney around and elbow him in the head and all of that. So that was really memorable. You're right though. Chuck didn't really they didn't give him a lot to do in the monologue, which is probably smart. They don't know. I think Jordan was a little rough. Maybe like he had a good episode, but then Jordan as a host was a little stiff. So maybe the expectations, they don't want to give the athlete a ton in the monologue, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure. And overall, that night, he appeared in 7 out of the 14 segments, not including the musical performance intros. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I think the best part of the show was Nirvana. So I was going to shout out the first time I listened to SNL Hall of Fame. Thomas Senna, the man himself, was the guest talking about Nirvana. So had to shout that out.
So yeah, Nirvana was really memorable in this episode. Is there something, sketch or anything that sticks out as far as Charles Barkley and his first time here on the show goes?
Definitely the one that seemed like they could use him, and we'll talk about his later shows where they put him front and center, but the first episode, which like I mentioned, there are like a handful of segments, half the show, of course including Cold Open and Weekend Update, that he did not appear in, was the Stuart Smalley Daily Affirmations, because they just kind of let him be himself, even though they did call him Charles B, who plays for the Phoenix S's. So that got a laugh out of me. And Muggsy Bogues comes on, and he joins the sketch, and it's a classic, Daily Affirmations with Stuart Smalley sketch, but it seemed like he was comfortable with that.
So I guess since, you're the best basketball player in the world, then I guess you've won a lot of championships.
Well, actually, I never won the championship.
Mm-hmm. And Charles, how do you feel about not having won, a championship?
Fine, it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But they did right after that, or a couple sketches later, do the Big and Tall Black Store. And, Charles Barkley was like, front to, straight to camera. Muggsy also appears in that one. So I'll shout those ones out as like a soft launch of Charles Barkley's comedic career.
Yeah, I definitely think that daily affirmation stood out to me as well. Jordan had done a daily affirmation with Stuart Smalley in his hosting gig 2 years prior. So it was really funny. It was almost a callback to Jordan because without saying his name, because Charles said that he referred to himself as the best basketball player in the world. And then I love Stuart's response. He's like, well, if you're the best basketball player in the world, then I guess you've won a lot of championships. And so that's like Charles like laughing at himself. As we saw post-career, him and Shaq, like they're always kind of giving Charles grief for never winning a title. So I think that showed that Charles can laugh at himself. When Muggsy was sharing his feelings to Charles, you could tell Charles is having fun with it and it's kind of starting to break a little bit. So I definitely dug that daily affirmation with Stuart Smalley. Charles Barkley's big, tall, and black men's stores. I like that they just gave Charles something to do, like straight to camera, like something solo, just to like give him his kind of showcase, like it's just Charles.
When you're Charles Barkley, shopping for clothes is never easy. Too small? Too short? Not black enough. That's why I started my chain, Charles Barkley Big, Tall, and Black Men's Stores. You see, ordinary black men have been able to always dress in style. Now big and tall and black men can too.
Kind of a fun concept. He's not taking himself too seriously. So those are really two good pulls as far as showcasing his personality goes.
Yeah, for sure. Those are the two that stood out for me. He did do the donkey basketball camp at the end of the show, which was funny if for no other reason that we have Charles Barkley 6'6" on a donkey. I think they didn't, make the donkey hold the entire weight of, the round mound of rebound.
I don't think so. I was sitting there wondering too. I'm like, is that donkey okay?
But the donkey does lose it a little bit, and that it's classic SNL live animal moment where everyone in the house and on set is laughing. So that was a good way to end that show. Is
it Tim Meadows' donkey that just starts walking away?
Yeah,
I think
there's I think 4 donkeys on set.
Yeah, and I think it's probably an old comedy rule that just like a group of people sitting on donkeys is just a funny visual. They recreated it. There was the political sitting on my donkey political talk show that they did in the late 90s that was really funny, and I think just that visual of people sitting on donkeys, like time tested classic.
And I'm a huge fan of donkeys. I think that they're very underrated. Animal in general. Yeah,
that's a hot take here. Donkeys are underrated. I like it.
Yeah, I would love to have a pet donkey. I mean, he'd probably live in the house.
Yeah, they don't name enough sports teams after donkeys as well.
Also true. Maybe hot take as well.
So I think that this first one was just kind of testing Charles's comfort level. Like I said, they gave him like one straight to camera. He was in a Gap sketch, so he was in like a recurring along with Stuart Smalley, another recurring character. So like a decent, like kind of endearing for a current NBA player to be doing something like that.
And very similar to what you mentioned about The Rock's first show, just kind of testing the waters, and also because the Gap sketch. And we also got to keep in mind, this is season 19. So this is that 4th season with the Farley, Spade, Sandler, Meadows, Schneider, like that group. So like the viewers at home are kind of expecting these sketches, and they're fitting in Charles Barkley to them. So at the Gap sketch, he comes in at the very end, it's, he comes in drag, and it's like a punchline. Mm-hmm. And then the Rob Schneider out of Africa, like you can put your weed in this. He comes in at the end as the police officer. So it's kind of just like, okay, well, the sketch could have been for anybody. Let's put Chuck in at the end. Yeah, and that's okay with me, because much like The Rock show, it was like a WWF promo show. So this was kind of just, let's have some fun with Charles Barkley on set. It's always funny to see somebody who's much taller or much different than the cast. So that's fine with me.
Yeah, play
he was 30 years old. He was still in the league for 7 more years.
Yeah, good shape. He was in good shape, by the way. Like, I think that was his most slim as an NBA player, too, because he was maybe a little chubby in Philadelphia sometimes, but like 93 Charles Barkley, like skinny guy in good shape. So it was back in the time, too, like the conventional thinking, it seemed, especially like on SNL, was if you're a big macho guy, you're gonna win people over if you dress in drag. That was the whole thing. Like if we got like probably an action star or an athlete, it's like, oh, we put him in a dress or something like that, and it's gonna get laughs. So I think they leaned into that a lot around that time period, especially.
Yeah, and that was for sure popular at that era. I mean, look at the Gap sketch. It's Sandler, it's Spade.
Yeah.
They did that. They did that a few times. That guy was the Gap. That was the 4th time they did that. So they had already been doing those characters. So to have, okay, let's bring in the big NBA player to join them. It's just, low hanging fruit for the show at that point.
September of 93, first hosting gig. Pretty fun. It took a while for them to bring him back. He retired from basketball in the year 2000, but it took another 10 years almost for Chuck to come back. So it was season 35, episode 11, January of 2010. And again, like some more NBA themed stuff. He's involved in recurring sketches of the time. So he's playing with this cast of 2010 and kind of getting involved in their sketches and their nonsense. And this one might have, like, maybe, in my opinion, maybe his best performance in a sketch out of his 4 times. Just a little teaser. But is anything in his second hosting appearance that kind of sticks out to you?
Well, this one notable now. He's 46 years old. The episode was delayed 35 minutes because of the Cowboys-Eagles NFC wildcard game. Cowboys won, and they referenced that in the monologue because they're delayed. Now it's not Saturday Night Live, it's early Sunday morning live at this point. And that was funny. I will point out, I have to point this out, he did cite some SNL stats in the monologue. He made fun of the show because they had like almost no black hosts for a long stretch. And he does call out Dwayne Johnson as being partially black to count him in those stats. So whenever I hear a host do some stats, I have to mention that. But for that, he gets to be in a whole new playground. Now we're in 2010, so we're in this maybe 3rd golden age of SNL with Sudeikis, Wig, Sandberg. It's near the end of that era probably because they came in 05, 06. But he gets to be in a MacGruber, so he gets a 3-part run pre-tape. And I'll just start with that because...
Or Darrell.
Yeah, Darrell. It's Daryl. So I'll start with that because it's fun to have. We had Betty White come after this show, and she did a MacGruber as well, and another sketch we'll talk about, I'm sure. But that was I'll start with that one. I mean, the MacGruber is racist as a concept was just funny anyway, but to have Charles Barkley there made it way funnier, in my opinion.
Okay, don't worry, gang. And when I say gang, I'm not insinuating that anyone here is a Crip or a Blood or in any other black gang. Or white gang. Well, whites could have gangs too, right, Darrell?
It's Daryl.
Sure enough. But look, if there's one thing I've learned from the sensitivity training classes that I was forced to go to, it's that regardless of the color of our skin, we can all work together.
10 seconds, MacGruber.
Okay, Vicky, hand me that screw.
You got it, MacGruber.
Okay, Darrell, respectfully, hand me that pen.
Which pen?
That one, right there.
I can't tell which one you point at. Be more specific.
That one, the African-American pen.
What?
Sorry, the Negro pen? Negro-American pen?
Just call it a black pen.
Oh, so now...
Just seeing like the steps by the end, MacGruber had gone to like some sort of counseling or racial sensitivity training, and he's just like, he pretends to be Zen, but then at the end, the racist nature of MacGruber just comes out. Again, but like Charles is just like, you could tell, like, the thing, I think this is a good reason why he's so endearing is because watching him in this sketch, it seems like he gets the humor. He gets why this is funny. He gets the show. Part of him like understands what's happening in the MacGruber sketch and why it's funny. So I can kind of get the sense that Charles has a good sense of humor and knows like why this is funny.
Totally. And to go off a point you mentioned earlier about why he's a funny athlete is the self-deprecation, because I can remember back then when the first video came out of his golf swing. And if you've never seen that video, it's basically, like a lot of ex-athletes who get into golf, and he was one of them. And his golf swing is basically him doing a backswing, coming up, pausing, and then hitting the ball. And that was shared all over the internet. We're going back, this is even pre-2010, but he did do a sketch with doing that. And I think this is, maybe Thomas, you're going to mention the sketch, but his like physical comedy that he does, the concept of the sketch is him doing other activities in the same manner of going in, pausing, and then going way too hard. So I have in my notes, him putting the magnet on the fridge was my favorite moment of the show.
No, that was outstanding. And he's just so good. He's really good at knowing his brand, or knowing why people like him and why people think he's funny. And part of it is he knows he has a jacked up golf swing, so he leans into it. Might as well, right? Let's lean into it, make fun of myself. And that the Haney Project, that's what that sketch was called. Like, it's just total self-deprecation, but he's like, we're all laughing together. Like, we're not laughing at Charles, and like he's laughing with us. So,
and he really did that. He really got the swing coach.
Yeah,
in real life.
He really did. Yeah, I've seen him swing a golf club in person right before my eyes, and it was jarring. I knew I had seen video of it, but we went to a celebrity golf tournament, like in Lake Tahoe every summer. So we went in 2010, like maybe a few months after this episode, and we saw Charles at one of the holes, and I took video of it, and it was just like a sight to behold. So it is even more jarring in person to see that swing, man.
That's a great, like, two truths and a lie, or icebreaker, is that I saw Charles Barkley's golf swing in the flesh.
And it scarred me for life. So, but yeah, Charles makes fun of him. He made fun of himself too in a sketch, the very last one, Barkley's Bank. So he kind of made fun of his gambling proclivities in that one, which is a really great premise, Mike.
Barkley's Bank. For over 300 years, Barclays has offered products and services tailored to meet the specific needs of its customers worldwide, with investment strategies that span the financial spectrum.
Boring! Hi, I'm Charles Barkley. If you're looking for a new way to manage your money, perhaps you should try Barclays Bank. At Barclays Bank, it's simple. You give me your money, I promise you two things. I'm either going to double it or I'll lose it all. And that's a promise.
Yep, that was the other one I wanted to mention because of this quote alone. Give me your money, I promise you two things. I'm either going to double it or lose it all. That's a promise.
And then he only asked, two questions to them?
Yeah, what's your favorite color, right? Yeah, and then, I think they said, blue or something. And then they said, what about between red and black?
Just between red and black, yeah.
So yeah, he did take outside things that if you've never heard of Charles Barkley, they're funny. But if you're familiar with what makes him funny, even at his own expense, he leaned into it. So I think the second show is what makes him a returning host for 3 and 4, but also just solidifies him as like, this guy can do this.
He would have been just a one-time host that we would remember, like, oh yeah, I remember when Charles Barkley hosted in '93, but his run on TNT and just him building up his brand and everything. And I think, yeah, you're right. This second hosting gig was like, okay, I think we have a mainstay because this guy just kind of like gets it. He's like down to clown. And that's what a lot of this show's about. But honestly, like low key, my favorite Barkley sketch, I think he's the best in the first sketch of the night. It's a game show sketch called Real Quotes.
The next famous line is from the film A Few Good Men. It's famously delivered by Jack Nicholson, and the line is, "You can't handle
my privates."
Incorrect.
Be that as it may, you cannot handle them, so keep your hand to yourself.
No one was asking.
You can never be too safe, Reg.
It's an old SNL trope of a game show with bad contestants. They're asking them to like finish movie quotes, and they're giving the wrong quotes, of course, and they're frustrating Bill Hader as the game show host. But Charles has like pretty good comedic delivery in this one. Probably his best delivery out of the 4 episodes that he's hosted. Like, this was kind of impressive by Chuck. I like this sketch, and I liked his performance.
I literally had that, Thomas, in my notes. Chuck's line delivery kills, I think, the best timing he's shown on the show.
Yeah. No, it's really great. Who was the other contestant? I forget. Was it Kristen?
It was Wig, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just Kristen, the 2 of them.
Just the 2 of them, and then Bill as, of course,
Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig, and Chuck.
Chuck played really well off of Bill and Kristen. Like, that was impressive. When I doubted Chuck's like performances and sketches, his sketch comedy ability, which, I mean, let's be honest, he's not, as far as hosts go, and like hosts that we especially we've talked about on this show, he's not the classic gonna knock it out of the park with my performance in a sketch. But this one really impressed me, so I'm glad you highlighted it too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have one more, and I just feel like it's worth mentioning because of this sketch's area in the SNL universe, which is Scared Straight. So, and I just wanted to show the list of people that he's come after and before, which are the prisoners that play alongside Keenan's character. We all know the sketch. We have the 3 youths there being scared straight by Jason Sudeikis' police officer. They bring Keenan in to scare them and make the raunchiest jokes of the night. And it was Tracy Morgan, Taylor Swift, Betty White, Zach Galifianakis, and Lindsay Lohan. So like I mentioned, Betty White did a MacGruber this season as well. So Charles Barkley, and this is, maybe not a highlight for Chuck, but he's having a blast. And it's a sketch notorious for breaking, so you can't blame the guy, but I have to highlight that one.
All right, now, my name is Lorenzo McIntosh.
And I'm his dad, Marvin.
But you can call us the Ken Griffies, because whether you get junior or senior, we gonna knock your ass out the park.
That's right.
Now, what are they in here for? You know what? Let me guess. Cannibalism.
Good guess, son.
What are you kidding? That's a horrible guess. No, we caught these kids hanging around the abandoned rail yard.
Trespassing, huh? That's where it starts. Next thing you know is rabies.
Sure is, Pops. Rabies.
He's following Taylor Swift and cornrows, that legacy. That's a hell of a legacy to live up to. Yeah, Charles is up for the challenge. So probably a very loose episode. It's a very fun, loose episode. Again, theme, nobody's going to accuse Chuck of being like this amazing sketch performer, this amazing but he has this like charisma about him that people want him back. And they got him back 2 seasons later. It didn't take 16 years. It only took 2 years to bring him back. Season 37, episode 11, January of 2012. As soon as he appeared on screen, I was like, has he lost weight? He looks a little more slim. But then that's what his monologue was about. So it wasn't just in my imagination.
Yeah, he said he lost 38 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was glued to the cue cards, though. That was one of my big observations.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, Chuck, this is your 3rd time, and you're like really glued to those cue cards still.
And the button on the monologue didn't hit with the audience.
Yeah.
It was he makes a joke to the audience that they all look like turkey legs to him, like he wants to eat the audience because he's been so hungry on his weight loss journey.
The point is, Weight Watchers work for me. I feel great. Except for one thing, I am so hungry, I am starving. So please forgive me if I eat one of you tonight. Y'all all look like turkey legs to me, especially you. But we have a great show for you tonight. A turkey leg named Kelly Clarkson is here. I'm gonna cover her in butter and gobble her up. So stick around, we'll be right back.
But yeah, he's lovable. That's part of his charm, is he could just make a totally dead joke and we'll hear crickets. But so the first sketch, kind of funny. Like, I always kind of like when the host is being impersonated in a sketch that they're doing. So Charles playing Shaq, Keenan playing Charles Barkley. How many times did you say Keenan impersonated Barkley?
22.
22 times. Wow. And once in front of Chuck, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah. Or no, twice. Did he? Because in one of his monologues, I think he asked Keenan to do his impersonation.
Yeah, he does as himself, as Keenan pops out in that show.
Okay.
Or the other show.
Yeah. So do you think like starting with the sports sketch, because I always wonder, like non-sports fans, like what they think. Are they going to get some of these references or anything? So they do an Inside the NBA sketch, like him, like again, Chuck playing Shaq and Keenan playing Charles. Like, how do you think something like that goes over with kind of the general SNL crowd?
I always think that's risk reward, and you can't please everybody. They'll have younger actors, actresses parody their own shows come in that I haven't seen the show, but jokes per page. If it works, it works. But it's also would be an entirely missed opportunity if you didn't try to exploit that audience, because you're hoping that they joined the audience just for tonight, and hopefully they'll stay for next week. So he did Inside the NBA in the second episode we didn't mention, but with like Andy Samberg playing a Make-A-Wish kid as a commentator. So this third one is like a actual true Inside the NBA because it's the panel.
At least get your predictions for the late game.
I have a prediction. I am the great Shaqradamus.
Who's giving them all these props?
I will predict that Charles Barkley gonna be fat again. He'll be so fat, he'll star in Fat Free Willy 2.
First of all, dummy, there was already a Free Willy 2. But I'd rather be in Free Willy 2 than Kazam 1.
We have Keenan playing Charles Barkley and him being Shaq, which his like hair and makeup were just hilarious.
Yeah, it kind of didn't look like Shaq.
He didn't look like Shaq at all.
He was totally game to go on and make fun of Shaq on SNL. Yeah, I bet they showed the clip on Inside the NBA after that, and they all had a laugh. But I like seeing them start with something like that.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, this is when you see somebody who's known to the audience for one thing, you want to give them that one thing. So no problems with me, and as somebody who watches Inside the NBA and knows that panel, like that show itself is funny. So
yeah,
you just watch it, you'll get laughs. Of course, it's funnier if you're an NBA follower, but like those guys on that stage are funny. So it's not like taking a political sketch that's not funny and trying to punch it up. Like those people are funny. So if you haven't seen it, then they are referencing comedy outside the show.
So is there another segment or sketch that really like was a highlight for you in this episode?
Yeah, there were probably two other ones, and I wanted to highlight the Joanne's coming out sketch because we mentioned the 90s trope of like men in drag. Then we had a big era with Kate Adie Cecily of like women in drag, especially in politics, playing Republican politicians and stuff. But this is a case where like Charles Barkley like played small, and it really worked because the timing with the other cast members was really, really good. And the sketch never really escalated, which normally is not a great thing. But the fact that Charles Barkley, who's a big, large man, as a woman, announcing to, the friend group that she's a lesbian, you think that it would have been more exploited and kind of like, haha, about that. But it was played pretty serious. And there was a moment with Vanessa Bayer.
But what about that time we took that outdoor shower together? You never once looked down.
I'm not attracted to you.
Really? Is there something I need to fix?
Yes.
And there's no other line after that. They moved the scene along, so it just, yes.
Yeah.
So I think a moment like that, we're going to talk about, is he Hall of Fame worthy? There are moments in his career at SNL that I like to highlight as this guy can do it, and that's a moment because he could have broke. They could have added a Keenan crutch line after that to highlight the humor, but they didn't. They let Charles Barkley just go, yes.
Very, very subtle, very low key, very good delivery. And was it Paul Britton who you get kind of like the good funny visual of like Paul Britton's short in stature standing next to Chuck, and so there's like some good visuals.
Yep, he was the boyfriend of Joanne.
Yeah. So, yeah, Joanne's announcement. That one stood out to me. But I have a feeling you're about to say my favorite from the night, but I don't know. We'll see if we're on the same wavelength here.
Well, also Fred Armisen in that sketch that says, "You're going to be a great lesbian."
Very heartfelt.
Yeah. It just totally matter of fact, not played for anything else besides just that. You're going to be a great lesbian.
Yeah.
I would say, we're talking about Paul Britton. Are you teaming me up here?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Lord Windermere, which is one of like 4 Paul Britton recurring sketches. And this like hit for me more now, especially knowing the history of the cup of coffee that Paul Britton had on the show, who left him, mid-season. That's a character that I don't think has that been covered on a podcast of SNL
Lord
before?
Windermere? No, there would be no reason. We certainly haven't covered Paul Britton here. Paul Britton's someone who's like just kind of slipped through the cracks of SNL history, honestly.
Totally. You want to tell the folks at home what Lord Windermere is? Who he is?
The premise of the sketch is Jason Sudeikis plays this guy who's hosting his friends to watch the football game. And his daughter's boyfriend is coming by. And he's this, like, they knock on the door, and he's this, like, aristocratic, kind of, like, dainty, dressed in, what would you describe it? Like, what kind of...
It's all very Baroque. You have, like, Bill Hader as his footman playing a tiny harpsichord.
Yeah.
Like, very jaunting around the maypole, feather in the cap, knickers on.
Yes, exactly. So he's this just, like, goofy character. He wants everybody to call him Lord Windermere. I think his name's something else. They call him a different name, but he wants to be called Lord Windermere. And he demands sweets. That's his favorite thing. He's always wanting sweets. He likes tickle fights. So he's just like a little odd character created by Paul Britton. Did he only do it twice?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and I remember both of them clearly. Like Lord Windermere is something that like was etched into my mind, and this was a really great one. I love Charles because everybody in the room was just like kind of put off by Lord Windermere. They didn't know what to think, and I thought it was a little weird. But Charles immediately buys in and was like taken with Lord Windermere. So I love that, and I love how Charles played it.
I know a riddle, but I shan't tell a soul unless you can pinch my bottom. But you'll have to catch me first.
Get that bottom over here! Bring that little bottom! I hear that riddle! For the love of God, Gary, pinch that bottom! I'm trying! Oh man, this is the best night of my life. I love the little Lord. He's just a regular Joe.
A regular Joe?
And that's also the nature of that sketch is Sudeikis is like the girlfriend's dad, and he loves him.
He loves him. Yeah.
Already, that's the premise of the sketch is you think the trope of meeting your girlfriend's father is going to be tough. There's going to be some machismo and some nervousness. Is that this little guy prancing around, and Sudeikis can't get enough of it, and so Barkley plays as like the extension of him.
Yeah.
As like you got to pinch his bottom.
And he's running around.
I'll have a riddle for you, but I won't tell you unless you pinch my bottom. And he starts running around, and like Barkley wants in on that. So the other two, Sandberg and like they're just trying to watch the game, but
yeah,
Barkley's all in.
He's all in. I love when Barkley says, "I want to hold him." Just as a matter of fact, that like gave me a nice, like, real genuine laugh when Chuck's just like, "I want to hold him," and Paul Britton's so small that he could, and Sudeikis just yelling at Andy Samberg, who's his son, "Why don't you go get Lord Windermere some sweets?" And he's like, just the whole is this cast like this, and what's the other Paul Britton that I like? Sex Ed is another.
Yeah, that
Paul
was
Britton.
his one that he did the most.
I love that one.
So that's if anything he's known for, it's that. But this one is a hidden gem because is it the greatest sketch ever? No, but it has a joke and it hits you with it, and I like it.
And most importantly, I think Chuck is like genuinely good in this sketch too.
And trying his hardest, I think, out of all the sketches he's been in to not break.
Yeah, that's surprising because it seems like once per episode that he'll start breaking, but it didn't happen in Lord Windermere. That's kind of crazy. It seemed like he knew why this was funny, and he's just down to clown.
Because at one point he does hold Paul Britton, Lord Windermere, and of course you have large NBA star Charles Barkley holding this small man, and Charles Barkley is doing everything he can to not just lose it.
That was the highlight of the episode for me in terms of, I think it was just the best sketch, and it was Charles's best performance in a sketch.
Nice. I'm glad you liked that one.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, absolutely. Love Lord Windermere. Yeah, not much else. Like, they had one where he played a character called the Dong Father in the 17th Annual Adult Video Awards. Is basically the whole sketch was just the in memoriam at these Adult Video Awards. But yeah, I mean, SNL obviously liked him. He had a fun episode. Again, a very loose atmosphere. They're an 8H that night. 6 years later, Charles is back for more. Season 43, episode 14, his fourth and most recent appearance. So it's been going on 7 years now, 6 or 7 years since he's been on. There is actually, you know what, especially like the run at the end, I thought was really good. Like, but what first stood out to you with this episode?
This one is fresh in my mind for sure. I have to say, the previous one we just talked about, a friend of mine went to that taping. And so I texted him this morning, and because he was at the after party, and I said, like, "Oh, what did you remember from Chuck at the after party?" And because he told me a couple months ago, I had no idea I'd be talking about Charles with you tonight. And he just said that he sat at the bar the whole after party and was surrounded by models, and they were doing tequila shots all night. And Charles Barkley kept telling them, "I have to be in New Orleans tomorrow or cover a Pelicans Mavericks game," like, and that just played out the whole after party. So little inside baseball, but shout out to Dylan for the story.
Thanks, Dylan.
This season 43 one. This one is interesting because they lean a little political in this one, right?
A little bit, yeah.
There's a couple concepts that Charles Barkley seems very game with, but it's because of the LeBron James shut up and dribble controversy when he spoke out about something, and he got that comment about like just play basketball, and that was a big thing going on in the whole sports world. This is around Kaepernick time, kneeling for the anthem, and so he says, and it's a perfect Chuck quote, "I've been saying whatever the hell I want for 30 years. I'm hosting SNL for the fourth time for no reason." That was his tee up, was like, for that more politically charged episode for the fourth, when his previous three were mostly silliness. He does that. They do like a Me Too style sketch with the Grabby Awards, where it's all about actors who are handsy on set and giving unwanted massages and stuff. And the co-host, the male co-host, is like Beck Bennett, and he gets replaced by by Chris Redd, who gets replaced by Luke Knoll. And Charles Barkley plays Tim Franklin, who's wearing not a Time's Up pin, but a Tim's Up pin.
Oh, gosh.
And then there's one other one I'll say is the Ned's Roachaway. Did you want to talk about that one?
Yeah. So Charles plays a guy named Ned. He's the pitch man for his product, Ned's Roachaway. And it is very very socially kind of aware sketch. So he gives basically quote unquote good roaches guns to take care of the bad roaches.
So forget about those sprays. Roaches just drink that stuff up like tequila. You might as well put it in a piñata and throw those roaches a party. But with Ned's Roachaway, the party's over. Now, some people might say, but Ned, wouldn't gun-carrying roaches just add to my problem? That's so dumb it makes me mad. My vetting systems make sure only the best high-character, God-fearing roaches can carry guns. It's time to go to church. And none of my roaches are gay. And for really bad problems, you need Ned's Roachaway Max with bump stock.
There's like commentary on the discourse after there's a mass shooting, like a good guy with a gun could have taken care of it. And so that's like the play on that, which I found interesting because Charles will speak on politics a little bit, but I've never really seen him get involved with something so like politically heavy in its message, like something like that. Because something like Ned's Roachaway did have like a clear perspective and voice, I think.
And it was a funny sketch. It was all like animated little roaches holding AR-15s. And the people in the house would be going about their day while they would hear just these gunshots going off, as in the good roaches are shooting the bad ones. And they hit you with the button at the end that Ned's Roachaway is, NRA.
Yeah. And I admit, like, I kicked myself because I was like, I should have picked up on that immediately. Then at the end, I was like, oh, come on, got to be more of an astute viewer of SNL than that. So I was kicking myself, Mike, after that.
Yeah, that one I completely forgot about. So, maybe in the consciousness at the time, they had these like 3 in a row, political type of things, or at least like social issues. And then he had that pre-tape in the can that they had, which was actually funny. But the next one was the homework hotline.
Yeah.
Him playing off Mikey Day, who has a striking resemblance to like Jim Henson as the puppeteer. I think his name was Bobo, was the puppet. And it's all just sexual innuendo that he's hooking up with the puppet, which I think has been done. But it was funny with Charles Barkley, like literally having to carry that sketch. It's really just him and a puppet and like callers coming in.
And he has to play oblivious at first, and then he's like gets wise to it and says like, hang up on them. So yeah, there was a third one though, as far as like social conscious kind of sketch. What was it? Kind of in a conversation, probably even still, but especially at the time. He was in a sketch with Alex Rodriguez, and then Keenan playing a former football player. And the sketch is basically about how harmful the effects were of playing football.
Yeah,
so they're
that's
asking
like the CTE conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So they're talking about, like, Charles is talking about how hard basketball is, how grueling it is, and then Alex is saying how grueling baseball is, and then Keenan's like obviously affected by CTE. So that's like kind of saying something too. Like, these sketches are kind of getting involved in a lot of like the discourse that was happening.
And yet they found a way for Charles Barkley to be a good player in all of them. We talked about, I mean, at least I did earlier, about him kind of just being shoehorned in for a laugh in the earlier ones where he's leading these sketches and they're hitting. So maybe it's a commentary about modern SNL and he happened to be the host, but he did a good job with it.
Yeah, agreed. I said that there was a good run at the end, and the last 3 sketches of the night were probably like, I think, the 3 best in my opinion. So they, like, the beginning was like, wow, they're kind of going there with a lot of these topics, but then the last 3, which as of now are the last 3 sketches he's done on SNL, Hump or Dump, which was Charles. It was a dark sketch. Like, I was kind of a little surprised by that, Mike.
Right, it's like the classic dating show sketch, but all the commentary just comes back to, rule of 3. Charles Barkley is the 3rd contestant, and he just keeps doubling, tripling down. If you don't pick me, I'm going to kill myself. Yeah. That was the joke of the sketch, and they ran with it and made it funny.
Nah, girl, you pick me because I'm Twitter verified, and I always send you home in an Uber pool.
Ooh, color me intrigued. And Doug?
Let me put this plainly, Amanda. If you don't pick me, I'm gonna kill myself.
I'm sorry, I don't think I heard you right.
Yeah, you did. I'm gonna kill myself. I came to win, and I'm putting all my chips on the table.
Hey, come on, man. That's not cool. I mean, you can't put that on her. If you're battling depression right now, we can get you some help.
I'm not depressed. This is a game show. I want to win.
Is he allowed to do this?
No, of course not.
Because he was just saying it so matter-of-factly, like, oh, that's just what I'm going to do. And then his justification was like, he's in it to win it or something. So, like, that was his strategy.
Yep. That was completely strategic. Maybe they put that in there to soften the blow a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think he turned to Chris Redd because Chris Redd says, "Oh, I'll kill myself," and he goes, "Well, how are you going to do it?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "See, this guy doesn't know.
He doesn't know. He's never thought about it. He's just bluffing." Yeah. And Charles, he was kind of like straight face, pretty decent characterization of somebody like this. So I think that was a fun one by Chuck. The next one, the construction workers one, might be my favorite sketch that Charles was in, though he's part of the ensemble, but just as an overall sketch, it might have been my favorite one that he was involved with, like, across all 4. It's up there.
All right, I want to hear your commentary on it then.
Okay, so basically, like, these construction workers get into a conversation about what they would wear if they were women. And so I think Beck's the only one that's kind of resistant. Well, all of them are kind of like dipping their toe in the water of the conversation. And then all of a sudden, like the three of other ones, including Chuck, kind of get more into it. And Beck's still trying to fight it. But I just love how they ramp up. Like the escalation is them kind of saying like, yeah, I've kind of wondered what, if I was to dress elegantly like a woman, what I would wear. And then it turns into them like having specific ideas of what they would wear and what would look good on them and everything. So I just love the escalation. I thought they handled this very delicately and very in a clever way. So I was like all aboard with this sketch.
Come on, guys. Let's eat roast beef sandwiches and talk about the girls we'd like to date around with, huh?
Come on, we do that every day. Today we're exploring new avenues.
You know, sometimes when I watch the Oscars on the red carpet, I'm like, how would I wow them if I were a nominated actress? I don't know, right?
I think I'd wear a gown that had a large peekaboo hole in the back. I put a backwards necklace with a little pendant that comes around and float in the middle. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, this is definitely like his ensemble piece because it's hard to make a pro athlete or former pro athlete fit in the cast. Usually, we've seen it recently with like a really hot host and they make fun of or comment on how hot they are, or really tall host. Let's talk about how tall they are. This one was just like Charles, one of the guys. And so he was able to service the sketch more than comment on, hey, Charles Barkley's on SNL. Like, isn't that funny?
That's true. Yeah, that's a really great point. And he added to it, like, and it was good timing. And Chuck didn't always have that, But I think in this sketch, it was just like he added to the tone. I guess he struck the right tone for what the sketch was asking for, whether it was by accident or not. But like he totally like fit in. It was like his true again. Yeah, his ensemble piece that he pulled his own weight in this ensemble piece.
Yeah, and this might be a thread that we're getting to tonight, but it's the idea that Charles Barkley is not a comedically talented individual. He is a funny individual for sure, but gets comedy. And we've seen trained actors, famous people on the show who are in funny sketches, and I don't know if they get it. So the fact that he is involved in, like I said, servicing that idea. We want to talk Hall of Fame in the night here. Like that's something that would, edge him over to your ballot if you want to vote for him, is that he is bolstering this, not a passenger, as many hosts are in good sketches.
Yeah, agreed. And then the night ends in a totally fun way. Maybe his most fun sketch that he's been in SNL. Last Call, one of those great Kate and Keenan sketches. Sheila Sauvage. Yeah, just Charles has the right amount of awkward energy for this to work, I think.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't know if we've hit on hard enough tonight, is his charisma is so good. Like he's such a likable person. If you dig into his backstory, like he had a tough childhood. He really was, like Thomas said, top of the night. He was short for his position. Was a rebound king. He didn't make his team, and like all these different aspects of him, but he's a super likable guy. So when you put him in now this could ultimately be, if he never hosts again, his final SNL sketch, and you have him paired with Kate McKinnon, Last Call, of course, 10-1 sketch. And it's everything you could want it to be.
I gotta be honest, when I first saw you tonight, I thought, hell no. But now I'm not thinking because I'm drunk.
Oh, yeah. And of all the men in here, you're the only man in here. Let's go back to my place and do missionary, huh? That's where you try to teach me English until you get frustrated and leave the country.
I'd rather do the reverse cowgirl. That's why I put your cowboy hat over your face and walk you out back so you fall out the window.
Ooh, you're bad, man. You're bad.
My favorite part, like the showstoppers, and they put those things like from the dentist that they put in your mouth to like keep your mouth open.
Because their lips are in the way.
Yeah. He and Kate just start kissing, and of course you always get the funny like Keenan reactions to whatever's happening at the bar.
Keenan turns to stone.
He turns to stone. Yeah. This was just Charles just totally let his guard down. Like he said, screw it, I'm not self-conscious. And this, more than a lot of these other sketches, proved that like he's not self-conscious. He's down to do whatever. And Kate, seemed like Kate was having a really fun time playing off of him. It seemed like she was really enjoying this sketch too.
And the Vogelcheck sketch, I can obviously mention that one. And then this one, which involves like a lot of kissing and physical intimacy on a live stage. So I don't think you would have Charles Barkley or any other host. I mean, I have the list in front of me. Maybe you can name some other names that...
What is it? What list is it?
People who have appeared in the Sheila Sauvage Last Call sketch.
Larry David.
Larry David, yep.
Amy Schumer.
Correct. She's second most recent.
Okay. Who else appeared in the Last Call?
He was the seventh.
I don't know.
Charles Barkley.
Okay, who else was it?
It's been done 9 times.
Okay.
First of all with Louis C.K., then Vince Vaughn, John Goodman, Woody Harrelson, Larry David, Dave Chappelle, Charles Barkley, Amy Schumer, Adam Sandler.
Okay, I should have remembered. I remember the Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K. I should have remembered too. I remember John Goodman. I don't remember that. I have to go.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I have to go rewatch all the Sheila Sauvage sketches now.
Right, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I can't imagine Kate McKinnon would want to. I mean, she will do what it takes for the comedy, but if it's like a weird host, maybe she wouldn't want to. I mean, I know I just listed some names that might trigger some feelings, but Charles Barkley, like you said, is like has that awkward energy that matches because Sheila Sauvage is like not a sexy character. It's not a
no.
It's not played for the romantic. It's played for the gross aspect. So Charles Barkley doing that surprised me when I watched that episode like live in March of 2018.
Yeah,
I was surprised to see like, oh, they're ending with this. I know we all know what's happening next.
Yeah, it's a great ender. I think a great run of sketches to end the night. Fun episode. I think that's what you're getting with Chuck. You're getting just him being fun, a loose atmosphere. And I know a lot of us, like, we're really into, a lot of SNL fans are really into, like, the art of sketch comedy, right? Like, somebody's a technically good sketch performer, and they hit all the right beats and everything. But what should we do as fans of sketch comedy with somebody like Chuck, who's, honestly, like we've said it, like, not the most gifted sketch performer always, but he has that charisma. He's clearly beloved. So what should we do when somebody like that hosts? Like, let our guard down, you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it, is buckle in, enjoy the ride, because I think, I probably said this earlier, but like, we're being silly here. Mm-hmm. This doesn't have to be so serious. I mean, I think that SNL of all shows nails it to get serious and be funny. They don't always nail it. They've had some missteps with that, and been super serious. But when you have someone like, it's Charles Barkley, like, what do you want from us? We're having fun here. Is there no room for that? Like, of course there is. And I would love to have him back for a 5-timer.
So there's that. A great 4-time host, Sir Charles Barkley. Mr. Murray leaves us with a cliffhanger, though. Does he get invited back to become a 5-timer? Very, very interesting. I would say he's in the news a lot right now with the TNT move, the NBA move from TNT, and Inside the NBA being a show that won't be anymore. And that's very disappointing because for me, who's not even a big basketball fan, that is just a very enjoyable show. Barkley is a big part of that. And if you didn't get that from the conversation between Thomas and Mike, then listen to it again, for heaven's sake. Listen to it again. We're going to go right now to a sketch. This is called Real Quotes, and it comes from a hosted episode by Charles Barkley.
It's time for Real Quotes.
All right, welcome to Real Quotes, the game show that tests your knowledge of famous lines of movie dialogue. I'm your host, Reg Barnaby. Let's meet our contestants. He manages a Blockbuster in Baltimore, Maryland, Sam Jefferson.
Good to be here.
So you manage a Blockbuster. I bet that's going to come in handy.
If you say so, Reg.
And from Tacoma, Washington, she's a school teacher, Rebecca Lumpin.
It's so great to be somewhere, Reg.
Okay. Well, let's play the game Real Quotes. I will read the beginning of a famous movie quote. First one to buzz in and complete it wins the points. First quote from the film Cool Hand Luke. What we have here is a failure to... Sam.
Launch.
Incorrect.
But that's a movie.
Oh, Failure to Launch is a movie, but it does not complete the quote.
Seems like a gray area, Reg.
Well, it's not. Rebecca, what we have here is a failure to...
A failure to get along, but that doesn't mean we won't see eye to eye one of these days, so let's not burn any bridges and just agree to disagree. I bid you adieu, Godfrey.
It's incorrect. The right answer was a failure to communicate.
Oh, right, from Spartacus.
No, from Cool Hand...
Luke!
That wasn't one of our quotes.
Again, Reg, that's a gray area.
The next famous line is from the film A Few Good Men. It's famously delivered by Jack Nicholson, and the line is, you can't handle...
My privates.
Incorrect.
Be that as it may, you cannot handle them, so keep your hand to yourself.
No one was asking.
You can never be too safe, Reg.
Rebecca, you can't handle...
You can't handle your liquor. And if you don't leave me and my girlfriends alone, I'm going to have a word with the management, Buster Brown.
Incorrect. You thought that was the famous line for the military courtroom drama A Few Good Men?
I did. And I still do.
I was looking for the truth.
I told you the truth. You can't handle my privates.
Okay. All right. Very funny. Very good. Very good. All right. Next up, from the 1975 film Jaws, upon seeing the shark for the first time, Roy Scheider utters the unforgettable line, we're going to need a bigger...
Shark!
No. See, they saw the shark. He was so big, they thought they were going to need a bigger...
Shark bag!
Think water.
Ocean!
We're going to need a bigger ocean?
Yeah, if you get a bigger ocean, it's going to make the shark seem smaller. Then the joke would be on the shark.
No. Rebecca, we're going to need a bigger...
We're going to need a bigger house. If we intend to start a family, and intend to start a family we do. 3 girls, 3 boys, and an adopted child of sex yet to be determined. Oh no, all this talk about family made me forget to return my library books.
I was looking for boat.
Then you should go to a marina.
I'm not looking for a boat.
Reg, you got to stop talking in riddles.
The quote was, we're going to need a bigger boat because the shark was so big, the original boat wasn't big enough.
Man, that sounds like a good movie. I'm about to see that one day.
You manage a Blockbuster and you haven't seen Jaws?
No, I manage Blockbusters. We're a demolition company that specializes in destroying entire city blocks.
In the 1989 film Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner utters the line, if you build it...
We will knock it down.
What?
That's the slogan for Blockbusters. If you build it, we will knock it down. Look.
Oh, very good. All right, that noise means it's the end of the round. You each have 0 points, but Sam advances because he seems to have a slightly better sense of what quotes are. Sorry, Rebecca.
Sorry for what?
Come on down, Sue. Come on. All right. Okay, it's time for the speed round. Complete as many quotes as possible, as fast as you can, and here we go. Houston, we have a...
Arby's.
No. I see blank people.
2 people, you and Rebecca.
No. Life is like a box of
dead people.
May the force be
equal to mass times acceleration.
How do you know that?
I'm not a dummy. I just haven't seen a lot of movies.
Why don't you come on a show called Real Quotes?
I actually thought it was about fishing.
Fishing quotes?
Yeah, like we're gonna need a bigger boat.
All right, you know what? I'm done. I can't even tear. Let's just stand here and wait for the buzzer. All right, and that's all the time we have on Real Quotes. Until next time, here's looking at you, kid.
You shouldn't be looking at kids, Reg.
That is
Nice blow on that. You shouldn't be looking at kids, Reg. Great sketch. Man, I miss Hader as the game show host. That was some good stuff always. Speaking of good stuff, another great conversation between Thomas and his guest. In this case, it was Mike Murray. Follow more of his stuff on his Twitter account or at the SNN. Want to thank Thomas and Matt for joining us this week, and of course our friend Doug DeNance for his excellent announcing. Want to remind everybody that we do have a new email address, and that email address is the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. The SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Next week, we've got Nicole Brady, who was last with us in season 4, nominating Anna Gasteyer. She is back, and she will be discussing Bob Odenkirk. So that should be real fun. Listen, that's what I've got for you this week. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to be leaving now, but before I do, I have a favor to ask you. On your way out, as you pass the Weekend Update exhibit, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug DeNance saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.